When Eureka Street began, we were still in the last gasps of what you could call a Catholic culture of some kind. There were a sufficiently large number of people who were religiously literate, who understood where the church was coming from in its interventions in public life, whether they were public life, political public life or cultural public life. There was an understanding of the Catholic tradition, I think, which I think you'd be pushed to sustain an argument for its existence today. Up there in downtown Bangors. Thank you. Returning to some allegedly pristine time as a response to what's happening now is not really a very constructive response. It's a reactionary response that idealises and romanticises the 1950s. I actually was born in the 1950s. I know what Catholicism was like in the 1960s and 70s, and quite frankly it isn't as it was painted. It was ramshackle, it was by and large anti-intellectual. It was not in a position to be able to robustly respond to the better educated and more pluralistic context that Eureka Street has to live in today.
The Lord be with you. Reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. When Jesus heard that John had been arrested, he withdrew to Galilee. He left Nazareth and made his home in Capernaum by the sea.
I think the future of faith in a secularised culture such as Australia will come down to a few very basic things. One of them is something that really runs at odds with Australian culture, and that is the cultivation and development of an interior life. We're having this conversation in Sydney, which I think is and I come from Sydney and I love Sydney, but I think it is unquestionably the most consistently superficial part of Australian cultural life. It skates on the surface, and that may be because it's the most beautiful city in Australia. It's got the wonder of the harbour, it's got the beauty of the beaches, it's got all those things that are external. And I think Catholicism was able to operate on externals for a long time. Tribal gatherings, externalised activities like large ritual performances in liturgical activity. Really, if faith is to survive, it has to be interiorised.
Lord, may the sacrifice which has made our peace with you advance the peace and salvation of all the world. Strengthen in faith and love your pilgrim church on earth.
The other matter about faith in Australia is that so much of the work of the church in Australia is tied up with the education of children, and most of the connection points for people with the Catholic Church in Australia is through children. And unfortunately, something that's a truism among a lot of clergy in Australia, and has been throughout our history, is still the case today, that, so the saying goes, Jesus engaged with the adults and patted the children on the head. What the Catholic Church in Australia has done is engage with the children and patted the adults on the head. Now, I don't think that's a sustainable future, and one element of that has to be the consistent and plausible presentation of the faith and its entailments and its consequences in society for the living of the life in a way that resonates with the experience of people. It has to address their issues. What galvanises questioning in people and searching in people is the vivid instance of people given to a life of service. This was certainly the case in previous generations when there were abundant numbers of religious who embodied that outreach and service. It's embodied many volunteers who participate in the life of St Vincent de Paul. But I think if faith is to survive, it's got to be seen as not only the interior journey, but the other side's got to be there too. The outflowing of the love, the outreach in service. Small magazines always struggle, and our markets in Australia are not big for a couple of reasons. One is people aren't terribly interested in ideas in Australia, and also when they see things coming from a church or Catholic perspective, what they really think is going to happen is that someone's going to come out of the cloud and wag the finger at them. There's a rather silly attitude to religion in Australian society that all it will do is deliver interdicts, and clerics are there to be in pulpits wagging their fingers at people, but the Jesuit tradition has been one much more of the embrace of culture, of contemporary culture and its issues and concerns, and reflecting on them in the light of the gospel and our relationship with Jesus, and also the Catholic tradition. 20th anniversary is really a time to just pause, and I think the most important thing to do when we pause is actually to give thanks. There's nothing necessary about the existence of Eureka Street. It's not a compulsory part of life or a publishing record. It's something that only emerged from the courage and determination and conviction and generosity of people, and I think particularly of a couple of people. Morag Fraser, who gave to it in its first iteration as a printed magazine for over a decade, a life as a magazine of intellectual rigour, of openness, and of readiness to marry the Catholic tradition to the issues of the day. It was also overseen and encouraged and sponsored in its early days by the then provincial of the Jesuits and the poet and writer and professor of English at Melbourne University, Peter Steele. And Peter is the embodiment really of much of the spirit of Eureka Street, and I think has taken over time a quiet satisfaction in its existence and its prospering. But then there are loads of other people over time who've contributed through their generosity, and I think of people like Jack Waterford at the Canberra Times, Mick McGurr, who's a writer of great talent and capacity, of Andrew Hamilton, who's someone that's able to turn his mind to a diverse range of subjects with equal rigour and inclusiveness. But there have been loads of others.